welcome to all our viewers to a great format today, one of my favourites, the meaning of life. And today we talk about gratitude. Gratitude is often forgotten, and we often know it too. Be thankful as a threat or as a reproach of being ungrateful. There are a lot of patterns and conflicts and beliefs that come with gratitude, and today I'm going to discuss, with my guest, how we can integrate this nicely into our everyday life, live according to it, and what can happen to us as a result. Hello, dear Joshua. Nice that you are here today.
I'm very happy to.
You're a neuroscientist. You've already dealt with the topic of the subconscious a lot, and especially the topic of gratitude. What significance does that have for you?
Oh, very high. I even published my own mental training because I would settle gratitude purely now as a feeling on one of the highest levels. So, if you are grateful, if you can feel gratitude, you'll automatically have significantly fewer problems in your life. To generalise that.
But you have to feel it.
You have to feel it, yes.
I think that's the big problem with a lot of people working with these kinds of mental issues is that they just say it, but the feeling of gratitude, how can I feel that? There are sometimes situations when there really is no reason to be grateful, but it would be nice if you had that feeling. Do you have to link that to a really true story at the beginning?
Well, I always recommend it. In fact, everyone has things in their life to be thankful for. I'll take the very simplest topic now, even if they might be annoying. But if you have children, you are thankful for your children. You're thankful for your life. You're thankful for your parents when they raised you well. So there are many areas for which we can always be thankful and are also normally grateful for. And now comes the really interesting aspect. If we now look at it from the point of view of our brain, I can only have one feeling present at a time. That is, when I feel grateful, I can't be afraid at the same time. So that means the limbic system pushes out a feeling, and when that feeling's there, every other feeling is no longer dominant.
That means if I'm afraid or depressed, and if I'm using your noose, how often does the sentence come up in one day?
1,000 repetitions per hour. So that means if you use it for 8 hours, you have 10, 12 core sentences with, let's say, 80,000 repetitions, and then something happens in the system.
Do you have experiences with people who are really afraid and shaped by negative thoughts in everyday life and then have the noose with gratitude?
Exactly. Of course, we have several programs in this direction. I've also developed a fear-free mental training. It has to be said that it's not just the listening via the noose, that's the turbocharger. But let's get back to the functionality. We think about 60,000, 70,000 thoughts a day. And we don't even know what we're thinking because that's often routine. I'll give an example. Someone loses their job or their company and is afraid of this financial disaster, which they're just rushing towards. Then of those 60,000 thoughts, when the feeling of fear is strong enough, then more and more clusters form. So thoughts that then keep circling. That means they don't even notice. Somehow they think about the low account balance 5,000 times a day. And what is sort of a perpetuum mobile? That is, the feeling triggers thoughts, the thought triggers a feeling again, and that's how it actually moves faster and faster. And so, for example, people also become depressed, have anxiety disorders and so on. And the interesting thing is that if I link in gratitude in a process that may already be running, then I'll destroy this spiral. Because when I'm really grateful for what I have, or what I may have enjoyed, or what I currently have, or that I'm healthy, in the broadest sense, then I will stop this spiral of fear with gratitude. That's the idea. So not just fear, every negative spiral.
That's so interesting, especially nowadays, because if you're scared or have existential fear, I can imagine you would gain weight then to build up a bit of protection. Now, I have often heard from many people, in Corona times I gained weight. Now, there was a lot of work done with fear. And I think that subconsciously you really, because everyone has some kind of fear with it. Financial crash or job loss or fear of dying or something. That means that it would actually make sense now if you really break through that, because then the body reacts to these patterns with a reaction if we don't look at it.
Immune system goes down, for example. These are all issues that are coupled with fear.
But is it then really the fear of the current situation, of the topic? Or is it a deep fear from childhood coming up now through this channel?
Well, I'm assuming that it's actually always deeper lying fears. You have to imagine that the original programming takes place in the first years of life, usually actually in the first year of life. And if there's any news in the media today that we have such a pandemic here, or that unemployment's rising and that we have waves of insolvency and so on, then these primal fears are actually triggered by the mind. Because I now hear a message like this, and then I think about how is my work going, and thinking about it, how is my work going, and I then trigger some primal fear from below. The interesting thing is that fear is an extremely valuable emotion. If we weren't afraid, we would often risk our lives. And if a wild animal's after me, for example, then it makes sense that I'm afraid, so I'll run. And I always like to give pictures so that you can better understand what's happening in the body. That is, I have some outside perception. Let's take the animal example. I want to go on safari, then I fly to Africa, drive out in a jeep and sleep in a tent. I have a guide with me and he cooks great African food for me. Yeah, there are spices in it that don't agree with me. In short, I get diarrhea. So now I'm going behind the first bush, sitting there with my diarrhea because my immune system says this stuff has to go. We don't manage, so the body regenerates at full speed. So you have diarrhea, and suddenly you hear a lion growling behind the second bush, and you can tell from the growl that it's hungry. The interesting thing is that it takes less than 4 milliseconds, so 3.5 to 4 milliseconds, your entire system switches to adrenaline, so fear. The diarrhea is gone. We talked earlier about a vital measure of the immune system. This will be disabled immediately. Diarrhea is gone and you can run. So the question is where to? You have to think about it, but effectively you can physically escape immediately. And that's the benefit of fear, the excess adrenaline. The great thing is our body has an excess of adrenaline for about 8 minutes. In these 8 minutes, I can run like crazy. I can run faster than I've ever run in my life.
These are also the supernatural powers that people have.
Exactly. When a mother picks up a car, the child's lying underneath and so on. And that's adrenaline power. So now you run for 8 minutes and then the adrenaline deteriorates. The interesting thing is, if the lion gets you, you're more digestible without adrenaline. So it has fewer problems when it eats you. If you get rid of your adrenaline and get away, that's great too. Because then it's gone and you get back to your diarrhea. Well, I'm stretching that a bit now, but and today we have a permanent adrenaline loop. I get a letter from the tax office. I have to pay back or pay in advance. I'm afraid to lose my job. I'm stressed about my relationship. I have whatever.
I also find radio so terrible I can't listen to it anymore.
Exactly.
It's just a loop of fear.
Exactly. And now you have the problem that you have a high adrenaline level. Now, when you hear something on the radio, you should actually get out of the car and run for 8 minutes, but nobody does. Now you've increased adrenaline levels for hours, days, weeks. And one mental way would be to work against it with gratitude. So using a different feeling that reduces the fear. And gratitude is number one.
What is it? The opposite of thanking, ungrateful. What imprints of gratitude did we receive? What are the patterns?
Actually, the opposite would be indifference. I don't care at all, so actually no feeling. So let's say gratitude is an incredibly high vibration. We could try it out with the viewers, if just for a moment. We'll be quiet for 10 seconds and think, what can I be thankful for today? So what's the best thing I've experienced today? Everyone can take part. And then what happens in the body?
It opens up.
It's a different feeling right away. You become calmer, breathing becomes calmer. If we now had a biofeedback option, if I now connected an HRV measurement to you, it wouldn't take 10 seconds, but I'd say within 10 minutes, I could use measurements on your body to show that you became calmer, that your routines, your anxiety routines go down, that your heart rate variability gets really nice and clean, and you're relaxed just because you feel gratitude. You still have the same account balance, still have some problem with political statements and so on, but nothing's changed there, but your body responds because you're grateful.
And even if I can't feel the gratitude emotionally at the moment, we might have someone who is stuck in a loop of fear, or in such sadness who says, I can't make it just yet. Can the news then help them, at least subconsciously, to offer them such a bridge?
Exactly, definitely. It's mental training. This consists of 3 parts. It's always like that. First, you listen to an audiobook and you have a small workbook. You print it out and then fill it in. And my recommendation is, by the way, I also have it in my wallet outside in the car. I always have a card that says 5 things I'm grateful for. So the top point on my gratitude card is being with Simone, my wife. That's at the top. If I'm feeling any kind of stress, all I have to do is look at that, because that's a really strong anchor for me. Now I instantly calm down just thinking about it. So the fact that I'm with Simone has nothing to do with the account balance or with any pandemic, but it changes my feeling when I overhear a stupid news programme, for example. And that would be one aspect, for example. You listen to the audiobook and write yourself a card, and I'd say these 5 areas are enough. Everyone has them, so everyone has 5 areas, and then I don't really have to do anything else other than use the news and then look actively at my card a few times every day. That's all. And suddenly gratitude manifests in my life. And as a third pillar, that would be conscious, subconscious. I have such a middle piece. At night you can listen to a meditation to fall asleep. It's a very nice speaker. I know him quite well. It's me. And then you basically just listen to key phrases about gratitude for 20 minutes and fall asleep while doing it. The last 20 minutes as you drift off to sleep is how you build up your gratitude potion.
If you fall asleep during such meditations or don't notice, does it still work?
Even better. In fact, you have 20 minutes. This is the falling asleep phase. In those 20 minutes, you're in an extremely pronounced alpha state. You are open and fully absorb the programming.
What other meditations do you have? Also some to solve conflicts? I mean, wasn't that something, if you don't want to look at the conflict yet, that you then fall asleep, that you don't realise it?
Exactly, that happens to a lot of our users. They fall asleep during the meditations in the evening or during the day and say, I can only listen to it for 2-3 minutes and I fall asleep. I don't know why, but the fact is you have an unconscious setting there. You just get over it and it starts to change. That's super exciting.
Okay, so your consciousness makes another phenomenon. I don't want to look there, but then your subconscious will inevitably take over. And at some point the listener is then also able to stay awake. And then comes to the conclusions accordingly.
Exactly. The great thing is there's a conscious level, a pre-conscious level, which is often misunderstood as the subconscious, and then there is actually the real subconscious. You can't actually get to that except through a very strong feeling. But this pre-conscious level can actually be wonderfully worked on with coaching techniques. And the great thing is when I set a new setting on the subconscious level and then make a conscious decision about it, then I do not go via the thinnest interface on top. I'm now trying to consciously change my behaviour. It's tedious, time-consuming, and it's really annoying. If I change that unconsciously, then it just pops up into consciousness at the right moment, because it's much, much stronger. A conscious decision is always the hardest way. And we never consciously made the big decisions in our lives. Never. So that's the interesting thing about it.
Yes, above all, when I think about addiction, alcohol, drug addiction, about the trigger for this is usually a connection. What are the insights there, or are there also methods for this? When you say you always have to drink, or you suddenly have a need to consume something that also harms the body.
It's actually quite simple to imagine. An addiction is a search for something. When I'm addicted to something, it provides me with something I can't find any other way. If I have a food addiction, a sex addiction, an alcohol addiction, whatever, then I release something for myself and keep my energy flow going through this addiction. So I'm actually looking for a better way, but I don't have it. And then it's a kind of substitute.
But then you have to feel what it gives you. So if I take the topic of alcohol now, then there are some who really get joyful with it. Then there are those who become aggressive or those who black out. Then I have to see does this substance dissolve?
Absolutely, and I would also recommend not looking for it on your own, but really taking a coach or a therapist, whatever suits me. But I would take an external person to analyse it with me, because through self-coaching or self-study it's very difficult because I simply have my blind spots. Most of the time I don't even notice what my problems are.
And can I already do this via the news and already use this gratitude? Gratitude, if that is above everything, then it is this basic thing. I can always use it, no matter what conflicts I face.
I can also use that, for example, if I were addicted to alcohol. Then, with gratitude, I just see what changes about it. Can I reduce something? Can I change my behaviour? Can I change time routines? Basically, gratitude relieves pressure. So when I'm grateful, I take pressure off my system. So fear is pressure, for example. The vessels merge, the capillaries narrow. That means that I solve that alone by feeling grateful. So that's kind of a standard process, just letting go. I have a mental training for letting go. It's a huge thing, and for most people, unbelievable what happens there to understand in such a training. Only when I let go of something, then I can keep it. I let go of money, and suddenly I'm allowed to keep it. These are very simple routines.
Let go of a partner? Is that also a topic? The people who are most afraid of a failing relationship, that's when it happens. That's often the problem.
Well, in these training sessions, I always work with very simple images so that you can really understand it on a conscious level. There's a very simple picture of letting go. Take a cat and hold on to it. If it can't fight its way free, it'll die. If you keep holding it, if you keep your partnership that way, the partnership dies. So let it go, set it free, and that's when it gets interesting.
Yes, what else can this be related to, this letting go? Money beliefs? What are we holding on to? Yes, the children. There are also a lot of mothers who hold on to their sons. I mean, that brings us back to the partnership problem. We forgot that. That's coming in part 2.
It's mothers who end up living it as a substitute partner. Or fathers. That doesn't just refer to mothers. And it keeps getting worse. Even young people get used to this fact. I heard that once. I think over 40% of people under 30 live at home. So you have to imagine that those are numbers in Germany. Hotel mum, there's a convenience factor. There are parents who don't let go. But of course, these are all, at some point, really big cultural conflicts that are coming our way.
I think that also has to be the fact that many partnerships then have to be realigned when the kids are out of the house, and the fear of it. So a news helping to get rid of fears would be useful.
Well, there's a good joke where a 100-year-old couple is with a divorce judge. The judge says, "Why are you getting a divorce now? We wanted to wait until the children were dead."
But what's wrong with them? Or can we say wrong? It's also judgmental again, but why do they stay at home? So why don't you dare to go as a child? I still remember it for myself. I was really looking forward to it, to get out there and go my own way. I wouldn't have felt the need to stay there forever.
I think that you have to look at it individually again. I also think there are a lot of people who are at home but are unhappy in the situation, but who do so due to a sense of obligation to the parents, or the parents just don't want to let go. So there are a lot of constellations. And at the end of the day, we're back to the same game. Anything that happens under pressure is considered to be pathogenic. And we don't have to kid ourselves. Every one of us is under pressure. Everyone has their skeletons in the closet. The question is always, do I get to it consciously? And with a topic like gratitude, I can just take the pressure out of the system.
Yeah, it's really great in the implementation. If I want to devote myself to the topic of the gratitude now, then I take the news and wear it 8 hours a day. And from your experience, how long do I do that?
Well, between 4 and 8 weeks. I really tend to recommend to stay with the topic for 8 weeks. And then we'll support that with emails. This means that the client isn't left alone, but makes a decision. I'd now like to use gratitude. Then, as I said, firstly, they get an audiobook. They have to make a conscious decision. They need to be clear about why they want to use gratitude in the first place. But that happens with the audiobook. And as soon as I have the conscious decision, then I use the meditations to fall asleep, and the news for 8 hours all day, where I then align my subconscious orientation to gratitude.
Alexander, for example, has been using this news gratitude story for quite a while, and we'll show you a short video of him. He has commented on it.
Yeah, so I'd also like to say something about this subject news. I've tested it for almost 12 months now, not in terms of languages, but in terms of the word gratitude. I still think gratitude is the most important thing I can do for myself, for my personal maturity, for my personal development. And so I ran the Gratitude and Self-Love program. And what strikes me so deeply, every morning when I get up, I have this gratitude, the word gratitude and self-love really in mind. And that means I've been listening to it all night, and I get up in the morning and I have this deep feeling of gratitude inside me. And there I'm convinced that what I lived through the whole night of this gratitude in these programs that are on this news, that they're incredibly good for me personally. And I also think I can see that the last 12 months since I've been using this, an incredibly positive energy spread through myself, through the resonance that I was able to achieve with other people. Just as you are yourself, you just draw people like that into your life. And I'm also very grateful for that. So, that was a short statement of how I experienced it. Thank you.
Well, Alexander seems to be enthusiastic too, and has dedicated himself to the topic. And I remember he always tells me he wakes up in the morning too and has this feeling of gratitude. And that's just so nice to feel it directly in the morning. You know that. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and think, oh, right now, if you are also unhappy at work, or the children with school, they wake up in the morning
and already stressed.
Not all. When I think of my son, the poor child, he would need the news non-stop right away. Okay, so if you want to find out more about it now, you can really use it universally, even with young people and children, when you realise that they also have to bear the burden, that they can calm down a bit. Do you have a website?
Exactly. Just go to news.tv. There are videos purely about the news technology, so the hardware that I've developed, the research of the last 20 years. But there are also videos, how does mental training work? You can find all this on news.tv. And from there you can actually go to the websites where you can find the courses. My personal website, everything's linked there.
Great. Thank you, dear Joshua, for the great interview, and see you soon. And get home safely, by all means.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, well, the topic of gratitude is really very, very important to bring our body into a good state of relaxation. And as a result, of course, we are also less susceptible to all the external stresses that we are faced with, consciously or unconsciously. I hope you were able to get a lot out of it for yourself. I definitely was. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Bye.